Bockhold here from Coalesce. We're going to be talking about deploying your first ColdFusion app on the cloud. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Brian. Brian.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And excuse the X on the window behind me. I'm on the 27th floor, and they've marked my window for patching. So you may have a scaffold guy show up suddenly behind me, which may be entertaining. This presentation is I'm going to be talking about deploying your first ColdFusion app in the cloud. And it's going to be a very short PowerPoint, and then I'm going to actually just jump into AWS and just do it. So this is going to be very hands-on. I'm going to introduce some topics, and I'm jumping ahead, so I'm going to keep going here. So a little bit about me before we start. I'm Vice President CIO of Coalesce Solutions. We've been working with ColdFusion for over 20 years. We are the preferred vendor for migrating to the cloud, and we focus a lot of our solutions on compliance. So HIPAA, PCI, anything government, so on and so forth. So yeah, in this presentation, I'm going to be giving a little introduction to the AWS keywords. I'm going to do the demo of the deployment. I'm going to actually attach a load balancer and SSL certificate while we wait for the server to start. And we're going to route traffic to that load balancer, and I'm going to show you how to remotely administer your server without any network access to it. So hopefully trying to give you some ideas of how you can do things and show you how quickly and easy it can be done. And a lot of this session, I actually pulled some of the details from a previous one I did at the Summit West last year. And there's a website that we launched during that session called cfquickstart.com. It's a pretty simple website where I went into much more detail about all the way from how to manage your bills to root user administration versus IAM user administration and VPN. All that's in this quick start, which I am not getting into in this because it takes way too long to go through all those things. So now about get into the nuts and bolts here. So I want to ask a question. So how many of you wake up in the middle of the night or have a fear of waking up in the middle of the night and you find that your on-prem server has gone down and you don't have a replacement server on-prem to deploy to? So you think of, hey, you know what? I can use AWS or other cloud vendor to quickly get my application up and running. And what I'm hoping to show you is, in case of an emergency, you could get a server up within 15, 20, 30 minutes if you don't know the steps you're following. Yeah, and this is something that I know I've dealt with in the past. We actually made the move to AWS back in 2014 or 2013, and it was a 10 servers, Windows with a database and an actively being used application, and it was a learning experience, and it's always good to have help if you have it. So with that said, some of the lessons learned along the way I'm going to be talking about here. All right, so with AWS, why do you go to AWS? If you want to focus on your solutions, your applications, not the hardware. You don't want to pay up front. You want to make your application stay available as much as possible. You want to have a proximity to your users to take advantage of less latency. I mean, there's a lot of things that are um, in the favor of moving to something like AWS. So everybody's reasons are different. All right, so in terminology that I'm going to be talking about, so you don't just glaze over when I mention a new topic. So AWS Management Console is the web management interface where you can administer everything in AWS. AWS breaks out their data centers into clusters called a region. So there's a US East 1, there's a US East 2, which are in different cities, and there's West, and there's many other all over the world. And each of the idea is each of the data centers, each of the regions are completely isolated from each other. So if the idea of one goes down, the other one's going to be up. Then we have availability zone. There's multiple availability zones within each region. And availability zone could be one data center or it could be 12. You don't really know. Behind the scenes, it's how it's managed. And when you communicate within one availability zone, you get the high bandwidth, you get a lot of the features that they have for working within the that data center, that availability zone. Next topic, VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. This basically just means your network. EC2 is the name that AWS uses for their servers. So you can interchange VC2 instance with VM if you want to. Security groups, that's how you configure your firewall for each of your servers. So this is something you're gonna have to get very accustomed to. IAM is the place where you manage your access to AWS services. And when you launch a server, you're gonna use, or you're gonna create, but you're gonna use a key pair. And that key pair is something you're gonna be using to administer your server after it's launched. And a couple of other things I want to mention. AMI, it's a VM image. AWS Marketplace is a place to procure VM images. For example, we've got a number of ColdFusion products on the AWS Marketplace. And when you subscribe to them, you get access to the AMIs that are part of that listing. And you're going to see an example of that as I go ahead. Systems Manager is a place where you can remotely administer your servers. Certificate Manager is a place where you can let AWS deal with the SSL certs and let it renew itself. Route 53 is our DNS, and Elastic Load Balancing is the load balancer. So these are kind of the topics we're going to go to in this next 50 minutes. This is kind of the walkthrough that I use to talk about how you start from one point and you end up getting access to all these services. So AWS Marketplace, you get access to an AMI. You use the AMI to launch an EC2 instance. You then can attach the EC2 instance to a load balancer. You can push code to it with code deploy. You can create other infrastructure with CloudFormation. You administer the server with Systems Manager. If you need to set up any auto scaling or scaling up or down, you can do that with auto scaling. And then you monitor everything with CloudWatch. So overall, this just tells the story of you start from one place and you get access to all these other things, and they're very easy to set up. But obviously, everything gets more complicated the more business rules and other details you dig into. All right, so here are the steps at a high level, what we're going to do. We're going to subscribe to AWS Marketplace listing. We're going to launch a server. We're going to create a load balancer. We're going to point traffic to the load balancer, and then we're going to use SS as this systems manager to administer the server remotely. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Window. Okay. All right. So in case this is the first time you've seen the AWS console, I've already created an account. I've already logged in. At the top right, you can see which region you're currently in. I'm using California, even though I'm on the East Coast, just because I've got other data in this one that I want to keep it clean. So this is kind of like my fresh region to test with. There's a Cloud Shell, which is a great way to get access to CLI with your current profile. It actually opens up a shell script actually within your browser, which I'm not going to be doing. You have search up here. This is how you find anything and everything. So if you want to look at EC2s, type EC2 and it's going to show up there. And if you see a little star, if you click that, you have these shortcuts show up at the top of your console. So to start, we're going to go to AWS Marketplace. And I've already got a number of subscriptions, but I'm going to do another. So I'm going to click Discover Products. And you can either search for ColdFusion or Coalesce. You'll find it either way. So I'm going to click on the Ubuntu Linux just to walk you through very quickly. Click View Purchase Options and accept the terms. So here's where you accept the EULA, and you don't pay anything out of pocket for doing this. You don't pay anything until you actually launch a server. So you don't actually commit to anything during this acceptance. All right, so that's it. I've now subscribed to it. And sometimes it takes a few minutes for it to work. So I'm going to back out of that and go back to my subscriptions. And there's the one I just did. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this Windows 2025 server. So I'm going to click Launch on that line. I'm going to make sure I don't want to launch it in Asia Pacific. So let me find US West 1. Continue to launch with EC2. Give it a nice server name. Pick your instance type. So this is the size of the server, and they give you a nice little subtext here for what it is. And I'm going to pick a T3A.large. So 2-core, 8 gig. All right, next, you're gonna need a key pair. So I'm gonna create a new key pair. Leave it as PIM for this case because I'm using Windows. Create key pair, and that saves it. I'm going to let it create a security group. That's the network firewall. And I'm going to tell it not to allow RDP traffic because I want to show you how to do it without even connecting straight to your server. All right, and then in the advanced details, there's one extra step that I wish they didn't have in the advanced. IAM instance profile. This is how you grant access to your EC2 instance to other AWS services. So you grant an IAM role to this server and it will run as that role. So if you have a CLI running or the SDK running of AWS on that instance, it will automatically use the role that you have assigned to it. So there's no credentials, there's no logging in. It just works out of the box. So I'm going to create a new one for our remote management. And clicking that link drops me into IAM. I'm going to create a role. This is an AWS service, and it's going to be EC2 is the use case. And they have a quick start for EC2 role for systems manager. That's all I need. And this is the policy that's going to add to it. So these are all the permissions that that server is going to have. And basically, it's just going to be talking to SSM and reporting out some messages. Oops. Give it a name and create. All right. So we've already created the instance role. I'm going to hit refresh here. Oops. Refresh there. And there's demo role right there. Okay. And that's the last thing. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off. And with this being a new AWS account, they provide you a default VPC that has 2 subnets, and they're both in the public. So any server that has an IP address within those will be able to be accessed. to and from the internet. And you can click this or you can click that to go view your instance. And this jumps us over into EC2. And there it is. So in this, you can see that I've got an IP address assigned. This is not an elastic IP, so this will change if I shut it down and restart it. You will get a different IP address, so you have to be cognizant of that. While this is starting up, because it takes about 5-6 minutes, I'm going to actually create a load balancer and show you how to put that in front of the server and then attach an SSL certificate to it. So I'm going to create load balancer, and I want an application load balancer. That's your basic web app. I'm not going to get into network or gateway right now. Demo load balancer, give it a name. Internet facing, I'm not changing the network. I want to go ahead and put it in both availability zones. And I need to create a new security group for this. So let me create a security group real quick called load balancer. And I'm going to say all outbound traffic's fine. And I want to allow HTTP in from anywhere. Create security group. Don't forget to give a description. All right, we jump back over to the load balancer tab. Get rid of the default and choose my load balancer security group. So this sets up the permissions for inbound and outbound traffic from the load balancer. And that's distinct from the security group that's on the server. So you have to make sure that the load balancer can talk to the server and just make sure your outbound rules line up with your inbound if you tighten it down a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to say I want this to be HTTPS. So when a user comes in, HTTPS, and each load balancer has one or multiple target groups. This is where you actually put your servers into. So I'm going to go create a target group, and I'm going to add that new instance we just launched. All right, so in this target group, we're going to leave it as instances. This is my demo targets. And my server is actually just going to have HTTP. I don't have an SSL cert on that. So between the load balancer and the server, I'm going to use unencrypted port 80. I'm going to leave everything alone. Next. There's my instance. Check it, click include as pending, and then click create. Many times I end up checking this, not and clicking this button, and I end up having an empty target group, which is always fun. So be careful about that. All right, so we now have the target group. Go back to the load balancer page. And there we are. Select our new target group. Now, we got to configure our SSL certificate. This is going to be fun. So ACM, the AWS Certificate Manager. We're going to go request a new certificate. And I've already got one that I worked with, so in case this takes a while, we can use that one. So I'm going to request a new certificate, a new public, and this is going to be for demo.cf quick start. You can add multiple names. You can add wildcards like star dot. You can put just the nexus, which is that. For this case, I'm just doing one subnet. And I'm going to let the DNS validate it, and I'm going to go click request. So in a second, there we go. Here's the CNAME that needs to be added to your DNS zone. So your CNAME value and your CNAME name. I actually have this domain in Route 53 in this account. So I have a really easy way to do this. Normally you go into your DNS and you manually add it. I just have to click this button. Sorry, I did it very quick. Create records in Route 53. So this will do it for me, so I don't have to manually type in anything. Click that, say create records, bam. So now we just have to wait for it to be validated, and it'll update this page, but I like going back here, and you can click refresh. When I did this yesterday, it took about 10 seconds. So I give it a 50-50 chance we're going to see it in 10 seconds. All right, it wants to be a pain. There we go. Issued. So now it's ready to use. So back over to my load balancer tab for the 20th time. In my certificates, I'm going to refresh this list. I'm going to choose my demo subdomain I created. And down below, you've got the add-ons, basically. Like AWS WAF, if you want to put a web application firewall in front of your application, which I recommend. It's not very expensive to add. You can check this box and it'll automatically help you connect it. If you don't do it now, it's a checkbox, and then you drill in. It's not that hard to do afterwards. You have the global accelerator for keeping across multiple regions, and then you have CloudFront WAF combo, which is your CDN, caching and all that stuff. All right, click Create Load Balancer, and there we go. And while that is starting, I'm going to jump back over to Route 53. I'll just type it out like you guys will have to. Open a new tab, go into my zone. I'm going to create a new record for a demo, because that's the certificate we created. I'm going to leave it as an A. Oh, there it is. If you're using Route 53 and you're in the same account that you're hosting your services in, you can actually use an alias instead of typing it manually. So if I was using GoDaddy, for example, I would CNAME to this. So they give you the DNS name of the load balancer. But because I'm in AWS, I can actually do an alias. And what this does, you don't get hit with the charges for alias calls versus CNAME. They end up treating it a little bit differently, and it actually does. You have other options for health checks and other things too that come with alias. That could be pretty handy. So we're going to route traffic. Because we did alias, we have this drop down. I'm going to use load balancer. Pick my region. US West California. And there's my load balancer. Click Create Records. Voila. So let's see if everything's up and running. And not yet. Gotta wait a little minute. Okay. Load balancer's up. Certificates attached. We've routed the Route 53. So let's go ahead and log into the server while we wait on this to propagate. Looks like it has. But we don't have the server up and running yet. So let's go into that server in EC2. So we're going to jump back over to EC2. Click on our instance. And now, if you opened up the RDP port, you actually could just RDP into that IP address. you can actually, there's a drop-down box when you create the security group to say my IP, and it'll autofill your public IP, your current one. So if it changes, you have to keep that updated. So what you do is you can click the checkbox to select a line and click connect. And we're going to use Session Manager. If you did RDP, this is where you get the information from. You click get password, and you'll have to give your key pair, which you'll see that in a second for me. Instead of using RDP, I'm going to be using a new thing that came out in the last year called Fleet Manager. So click connect using Fleet Manager. Click the connect using Fleet Manager. I find this is way too many clicks, but we're going to do a key pair, and we're going to browse our local system for the key pair. And there it is. It's one we just created. We'll click connect. So what this is doing, you're going to see a remote desktop within my web browser. And you can connect up to 4 at a time. It ends up making like a grid of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can actually administer multiple servers at one time in this one view. So at this point, we are connecting what looks like remote desktop. It is, but it's not using the internet to do it. It's using our AWS console and then AWS talking to the server directly behind the scenes. No, James asked a question. You do not have to use this. You don't have to use Fleet Manager within your browser to connect. You can go over to the RDP section on the previous page here. And then when you click the get password, you can upload your key pair file again. And then boom, you get access to the administrator password. So you can just click this to copy it. And when you remote desktop into your server, just paste that in and boom, you're in, just like we are in the Fleet Manager. All right, so if you're using one of the images provided on AWS Marketplace, you're going to get this pop up. This is a quick start to help you get ColdFusion running. So we're going to say, yes, we agree to this. Yes, we're going to configure ColdFusion. Let's add the zip package. Our admin will be our administrator username. Give a nice super secret password. We're just going to access ColdFusion admin from localhost, so we don't need to add any extra IP addresses. And there we go. So now we just wait. It only takes a minute. So this is going to configure ColdFusion, start it, and then it's going to launch a browser pointing to your ColdFusion admin page. I'm trying not to multitask. I want to check the load balancer and see if it switches over to healthy as soon as this thing launches, but I'll wait. You know what? I'm going to preempt. Go ahead and opening Edge. To get past all these questions. All right. Should be done any second now. So you now have ColdFusion running. attached to IIS, and you now have ColdFusion operating within AWS. I want to make sure this comes up and I can log in real quick and show you it's just like any other server. There's nothing different between this and an on-prem from this perspective. Okay, so here we go. You can see we're in ColdFusion admin. It is a licensed ColdFusion enterprise, and you have full access to configure your server with no restrictions from this perspective of applying settings. All right, so let's go check our load balancer. Did I mess something up? I must have messed up one of my security groups. I allowed only HTTP in. Well, that was a mistake. HTTPS, save. Okay. Thankfully, it gave me a little heads up that it was unreachable, but now it is. And I'm going to drill into the target groups and check on the health of each server, and success. So every X second, and you can configure that, how often it checks. It's going to test your server with the path you provide. If it's healthy, it comes back with a 200, or whatever setting you set, you can have it set something else. It's going to flag this server as healthy. So it's now in the queue, the load balancer, and this is going to be fun. What did I do wrong? Demo.cf quick start pointing to the load balancer. All right, maybe I'm having fun with cached DNS. There we go. Perfect. So now you can see we have an SSL certificate for our website, and it's automatically managed by Amazon. So as long as I have the DNS entry in there that was created when we created the certificate manager, it will automatically keep this renewed. So you don't have to worry about this anymore. And just to prove that we are looking at the right thing, there's our cert. And there's the domain that we set it up with. So you can see, I mean, I started 30 minutes ago. I've done a number of things. I've launched servers. I've set up some other services around that, and we attach it to a load balancer, attach the SSL certificate, and we are now routing traffic to it. At this point, it's on you to obviously configure your ColdFusion app. And this is no different than what you would be running in prem in terms of how to configure it. So that's it for the demo. And if we need to, in the Q&A, which I will be here in a few minutes, we can dive anything else. Anybody has any questions or problems in the past? Also, I forgot to say this. I've been told we have a $100 Amazon gift card for the person of my choosing. So if you have that good questions, I'll probably pick you. So ask questions. All right, so let's just go back to my presentation. I know everybody loves reading words on the screen. I have a list of best practices. You've seen this in other presentations of mine, and I believe it may be on the cfquickstart.com website as well. There's a lot of things that you can do to improve your security. And I recommend you take the time and effort to try to lock some of the core things down. And I don't want to go into all these, so I'm just going to talk high level. Um, so other than security, make sure your system stays active and usable. So we launched one server in one availability zone. I could do exactly the same thing with another server in the other availability zone. And then when both those servers are attached to the load balancer, you now have high availability. You have the opportunity for one of the servers to be maintained. Um, you can have an opportunity for availability zone going down. It has happened in the past, albeit rare. And when it does, everything else goes down, not just you. They have a Redis service called Elasticache, and they actually have a relatively new service within that called Valkey, which is an open source Redis. And I've used that successfully for managing um, sessions with multiple servers. And the nice thing about Valkey is you can actually have it serverless. So you don't actually have to have a running instance. You're basically just paying for usage. Um, yeah, and then I'll move on to management. CloudWatch. I mentioned that's where you monitor your servers. There's also a CloudWatch agent that you can install on your server, and it'll push. You can point it to which logs, and it'll push those logs to CloudWatch. So this way you can aggregate all your logs in one place that's independent of your server, which also helps you have the benefits of it being immutable. You don't change CloudWatch once it's in there. And you can set a retention policy to keep this for 3 years if you wanted to, or 3 weeks, or 3 days. So next, CloudTrail. CloudTrail is an audit log for AWS, and that's very critical to make sure you keep an eye on that. And if you ever have any questions of something that changed or happened, it's going to be within CloudTrail, because CloudTrail has everything AWS, whether you're using the console or the CLI or the SDK, it's going to show up in CloudTrail. All right, this is one of my last slides. This is just a snippet of many of the logos that they provide in the standard AWS infrastructure guide. These are a number of the services that we've actually used in the past, or we currently use. There's probably more than what we have on here because we keep using new services. But the point I want to make here is there's a whole lot of terms, there's a whole lot of services. You need to partner with somebody who's done many of these things. Or you can try it yourself and work your way through like we have. It's up to you. All right. So that's it for my cloud introduction, starting your first EC2 instance. You can reach out to us at CF at Cola Solutions. You can get your ColdFusion licenses, AWS, Azure, and we actually now have GCP Marketplace as well. But you can reach us with email or go to getcoldfusion.com as well to procure ColdFusion. So with that said, we'll jump to any questions, but that's the end of my walkthrough here. All right. James says, Amazon has a lot of APIs. Can initial environment set up something that can be somewhat automated using APIs, i.e. minus some nuanced configurations, of course? I wonder, are you talking? AWS, I don't look at it as having a bunch of APIs. They have an SDK, which is pretty thorough. And I actually don't have a whole lot of experience communicating with the APIs behind the scenes because the SDK does all the work. So in terms of setting up your environment, if you end up using the IAM instance role, that's the only thing you have to worry about. So if you hook up your SDK, you run it on a server with the IAM instance role, you have access to the full product list of AWS. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's in the ballpark, I think. So Ron asked, can additional servers be added, removed automatically based on need? Yes, and that is when you go into the concept of auto scaling. So if I had it, okay, so let's say I launched a server, I put all my code on there, I configured it with the database, so on and so forth. I can take an image of it. So if I go to actions, image, and templates, I can create an image. So you can create your own AMI of your own server. And Windows is funny because depending on whether or not you are doing things Windows way or not, you have to sys prep first, but that's a different conversation. Anyways, so let's say you have an image of your server. You can create your auto scaling group. You got to create a launch template, and this is where you actually configure your AMI. So this is where you would pick. I haven't created one in here, but yeah. Oh, it's locked up. Here we go. So it automatically picked the ColdFusion 25 I just launched. I can say the instance size, key pair, all the same questions as launching the server, and including the instance profile or instance role. Once you create the launch template, you can then finish setting up the auto scaling group, and you can, especially if you're using the load balancer, you can actually you have a lot of options. You can do it based on CPU of the servers within that load balancer. You can do it based on volume. You can do it based on latency. If it takes a long time for it to come up, you have a number of options, but it's all within the auto scaling group. Okay, Randy asked, how do you deploy code? So doing it manually, you have access to the operating system. You can do that manually if you need to. Another way to do it is to use a service called Code Deploy. And this can come in multiple different flavors, but I'm going to keep it simple. So in here, you would create your application, you would create your deployment, and what this is it would link up to your Git repo or whatever, wherever your code is stored. Hopefully it's one that's compatible with Code Deploy. And if you have Code Deploy set up on a target group in the settings, it will automatically push your code on launch to the server. And if you end up committing a new commit, you can create a new deployment. You can retry deployment or create a new one. So in that case, you can say, I'm ready to push to these servers. You just click a button and it'll follow rules that you set. It could, if you have two servers, it could do shut down one, install, bring it back up. Once it shows up healthy, bring down the second one. So that's something you can do within Code Deploy. Oh, and T. Gandhi said something that's useful. If you launch more than one server, you're actually paying for each one running. So just be cognizant of what you launch. You have to pay for anything and everything that you create in your AWS account. All right, so Boris, good question. How would you do OS patching? It's on you. So you can either get in the habit of logging in and doing the updates, or within SSM, going back to this remote admin, this is a very handy place to be. You can set up this gets very complicated very quickly. I'm trying to make sure I just focus on what we need to do. So you can actually send requests down to, let's say you have 20 servers. You can run command and send that same command to all the servers. They also have patch management in here. They have things called documents, which basically you can look at as scripts. So there's a number of things that you can automate and do within AWS Console against a number of your systems. But this is where you would go for that. So Ron asked, do you have an AMI for Performance Manager or API Gateway? The 2025 version of the AMI includes the payment, sorry, not the payment, the PMT, but does not include the API Gateway. The 2023 and lower images have all three of them.
So, so Brian, there's also a question up in the Q&A. I'm not sure if you can see that from Dave Watts. I don't know if you handled that.
I have not. Thank you. Let me look at
Sure.
that real quick. Okay, so good question, Dave. I try to use CloudFormation wherever I can. It all depends on how much legwork you want to do before deploying. It takes a lot longer. You're going to have, errors in your YAML or your JSON. So it's preferable to use CloudFormation. But Terraform is the equivalent because Terraform would actually convert it to CloudFormation. But the nice thing about Terraform is you can, as many of you already know, Terraform can be converted into Azure equivalent or GCP equivalent, not just AWS. So if I have the time for the project that we're working on and if somebody requests it, then CloudFormation would be the way to go. All right, Forrest. CF patching, any better way than with the CF admin UI? So you could, I know personally, we actually have gotten used to using Packer to automate our builds of our AMIs. That way it's more of, we can focus on having it be a code-based patching and builds. So with that, we have implemented a way to pull down the ColdFusion update and run the installer with the silent methods, and then you kind of can automate that. You could do the same thing within Systems Manager. You can create your own commands. So as long as you can figure out a way to pull down the ColdFusion update, you can trigger it through the Systems Manager. That's a bit deeper than we're going to be able to go on this, but without logging into the server directly, I would do the Systems Manager if that's the easiest step for you to do. Jim, are you able to run the lockdown tool? Yes. There is nothing stopping you from treating the server like one you have on-prem once you get it deployed. So you can pull down the lockdown tool and apply that on your instance. All right. Trying to get information on price. So with the marketplace listings, the price is set to effectively 50 cents per 4 core and per hour. So that's the publicly available pricing that's available there. As of right now, there is not a way to run a Docker image through AWS Marketplace. So that's going to have to be something that you would work with Adobe Sales to get that handled. Unfortunately, that's not the answer I want to give. All right. Well, any other questions? I'll be happy to answer. But if not, that's it. And let me see who asked a bunch of questions. Let's see. You know what, James M, you asked the first question. You were engaging immediately, so I appreciate that. So I'll figure out how to give you that $100 gift card. Apparently, I need your name and
I'll
email,
handle
but
that for
Mark,
you, Brian.
perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, James, if you could email me, takata@adobe.com, just shoot me an email and we'll get that prize out to you. So congratulations.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a good rest of your day and enjoy the ColdFusion developer.
Thank you so much, Brian. Let's give Brian a big round of applause and thank him for this incredibly useful and important session. Cloud is the way to go, right? And sometimes it's a little bit hard to get started. So hopefully all of you have a solid understanding and background on how to get your ColdFusion up into the cloud. Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you, Brian, for the session. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Right on, folks. Well, stick around. In an hour and a half, we have got another session coming up. We've got Dave Ferguson, and he's going to be talking about databases and how you can hit them with your ColdFusion and optimization and all sorts of other cool stuff, and how to how to access them. I think he's going to talk about specifically cloud databases. So that's an important thing that's maybe not as easy as most folks think, but definitely stick around or come back. Either way, I'm going to go in the green room here and hang out, but I'll be back at 1:30 p.m. and I will see you all here. So thanks for sticking around, and there's still more Dev Week to come. Thanks.